My first encounter with Luca happened near the Berlin Wall Memorial, beside those preserved concrete slabs covered in fading graffiti. I was 25 then, freshly escaped from the suffocating monotony of the American Midwest and a failed relationship. Berlin, with its wounded yet pulsating energy, its gray palette and rebellious colors, resonated perfectly with my inner turmoil. Luca entered my view just like that, leaning against a graffiti depicting a giant, fractured face, wearing a slightly worn black leather jacket. His eyes were an uncommon shade of gray-green, like a forest after rain, holding a trace of casual scrutiny. "The way you look at it," he began, his voice carrying the rounded tones of Italian influence, yet tempered by a German crispness, "is like looking in a mirror." He pointed at the wall. "Like the last graffiti of East Berlin. Stubborn. Beautiful. With a touch of untimely sadness." My English was halting then, my vocabulary poor. I could only manage a clumsy response, "Sad? But it's still here. Not erased." "No, not erased," he smiled, a grin that instantly dissolved his air of detachment and became intensely attractive. "I'm Luca." "Nicole," I said, feeling as if my name took on a strange, thrilling rhythm as it rolled off his tongue. Looking back now, beneath the romantic surface of that encounter, dangerous undercurrents were already swirling. He saw me as an exotic, somewhat broken piece of art, and I mistook him for a knight who could rescue me from my mundane life. Our love was built from the start on this unequal foundation of curiosity and projection, setting the stage for the endless tug-of-war that was to come. The first cracks began with language, that most basic and fatal barrier. Our cohabitation unfolded in a cramped apartment in Kreuzberg. The stairs creaked, the walls were thin, but it had a small balcony overlooking the street, where we could hear the clatter of trams and smell the rich spices from the Turkish kebab shop below. The first few months were wrapped in hormones and novelty. Even my atrocious German was considered cute in his eyes. But the disillusionment came quickly. As the passion ebbed, revealing the rough texture of daily life, my language barrier became the first unbridgeable chasm between us, an invisible tool for him to exert power and assert superiority. He would laugh derisively when I messed up German prepositions again. At the supermarket, while I stood bewildered by product labels, he would snatch the shopping list from my hands, converse with the clerk at a speed that made me feel deeply inferior, and afterwards say in a tone mixing exasperation and reproach, "Nicole, how long have you been in Berlin? Can't you just try harder to remember these basic words?" Try harder, that phrase was like a tiny needle, repeatedly piercing my struggling self-esteem. I became afraid to speak, afraid of exposing my clumsiness and helplessness in public, which only reinforced my dependence on him. Arguments became frequent and petty. Over a forgotten bottle of milk. Over whose turn it was to take out the hated trash. Over him once again laughing and talking rapidly in German with others at a social gathering, leaving me completely sidelined, transparent. Once, mustering my courage, I wanted to surprise him by attempting to recreate an Italian home-style dish he'd mentioned, using a German recipe I found online. The result was predictable. The kitchen was a war zone, the dish tasted bizarre. He came home from work, saw the chaotic stove and the blackened mess on the plate, and his face instantly darkened. He didn't shout, just used an extreme, icy calm to say, "Nicole, sometimes your effort just creates more trouble. Next time, just wait for me." Trouble. The word landed like a stone in still water, creating tidal waves inside me. All my enthusiasm and anticipation, in his eyes, were just trouble. "I just wanted to do something for you." I defended myself, my voice thick with tears. "Do something for me?" He raised an eyebrow, his tone sarcastic. "Then learn to manage yourself first. Look at this kitchen, it looks like it's been bombed. Is this how you express love?" That argument didn't escalate into shouts, but it hurt more deeply than any before. It was like a blunt knife, slowly sawing away at my confidence in the relationship. He probably realized later that he'd gone too far, would come over to hug me, soothe me with his Italian sweet talk and burning physical presence, whispering, "I'm sorry, baby, I'm just tired from work, you know I love you," in my ear. I craved that momentary warmth and the illusion of reconciliation, yielding each time, swallowing the cold accusations and disappointments like shards of glass, burying them deep inside. But the rift, through the cycles of arguments, cold shoulders, and reconciliations, spread like stubborn mold on the walls, impossible to eradicate. The balance of power tilted completely in the tug-of-war between dependence and counterdependence. 3 years passed in this exhausting cycle. I was like a drowning person, desperately trying to grasp something to prove my worth, to prove I wasn't the burdensome trouble he described. I enrolled in more expensive German classes, though progress remained slow. I kept the apartment meticulously clean, every corner spotless. I even took up gardening, successfully nurturing that supposedly difficult red geranium on the balcony, watching it burst into flame-like blooms in the sunlight. I naively thought that if I became better, more independent, we could return to the beginning, or at least, I would earn his equal respect. But I was wrong. None of my efforts seemed to truly reach him. He came home late more and more often, his phone had a new password, he would instinctively step onto the balcony and lower his voice when taking calls. We spoke less and less, sometimes a dinner would pass with only the crisp sound of cutlery, starkly loud in the silent room. I tried to communicate, cautiously asking if he was facing difficulties. He would always brush me off with, "Work is busy, you're overthinking it," his gaze evasive, no longer willing to rest on my face for long. That Southern European passion had long been replaced by a Berlin-style, bone-deep coldness. A deep-seated unease grew like vines within me. I started losing sleep, checking his phone after he fell asleep, even though the password was changed and I couldn't access it. I became paranoid, searching his clothes for unfamiliar scents, repeatedly scrutinizing his social media follows. I knew this behavior was ugly, but I couldn't control it. The fear of losing everything was consuming my reason and my dignity. The final breaking point arrived on a seemingly ordinary afternoon. He had gone downstairs to take out the trash, leaving his phone casually on the sofa. The screen lit up suddenly, a message preview from Sophia popping up. As if possessed, I picked up his phone. My heart hammered wildly in my chest. I tried my birthday. Wrong password. A cold despair gripped me. I tried the date we met, the initials of his name. Finally, I tried Sophia's birthday. The phone unlocked. In that moment, the world seemed to stop. Blood rushed to my head, then froze instantly. I opened the message and saw the sentence that would incinerate my life. "She's just a homeless wretch, took her in on a whim back then, never thought she'd be so much trouble, now she's like a shadow I can't shake." Homeless. Took in. Trouble. Shadow I can't shake. Every word was like a red-hot brand, searing a mark of humiliation onto my heart. So, the romance I believed in was taking in? My 3 years of devotion and love were trouble? My entire existence was a shadow he couldn't shake. A profound sense of absurdity and sharp pain made it hard to breathe. Footsteps sounded at the door. He walked in, humming a tune, seeming in a good mood. Seeing me holding his phone, the smile froze on his face, replaced by the anger of violated territory. "Nicole," he snapped. "What are you doing? Give me the phone." I looked up, my vision blurred by tears, but I clearly saw the panic and anger on his face, the instinctive reaction of a secret exposed. "Who is Sophia?" My voice was dry as sandpaper. "None of your business. Give me the phone." He stepped forward, trying to snatch it. I stepped back, clutching the cold, truth-bearing metal block tightly, as if holding a live bomb. "Answer me. Homeless? Trouble? Shadow? Luca, is that all I am to you?" My voice rose uncontrollably, hysterical and trembling. You snooped through my phone and you think you're in the right? He tried to deflect with accusation, his tone full of impatience and contempt. Sophia and I are just friends, she understands the pressure I'm under, she understands. Understands what? I shrieked, interrupting him, all the grievance and resentment I'd stored up for 3 years erupting at once. Understands that you have a homeless, troublesome girlfriend clinging to you like a shadow? Luca, tell me, what were these 3 years to you? A long, reluctant charity performance? My breakdown was like a bursting dam, washing away all reason and restraint. My gaze swept wildly over this home we had built together over 3 years. Every object now seemed to mock my stupidity and pity silently. My eyes finally landed on the multicolored glass pendant lamp in the center of the living room, the false testament to our love, the token we had picked out together at the flea market like a real couple. I rushed into the kitchen, my mind a blank, consumed only by the impulse to destroy. I grabbed the heaviest meat cleaver. Luca stared in horror, his eyes wide, trying to rush over and stop me. Nicole! You're insane. Put that down. What are you doing? I am insane. Driven insane by you. I screamed hoarsely, batting his hand away, climbing onto the table, and putting all my strength into swinging the cleaver at that beautiful, fake lamp. Crash! A deafening shatter. Colored glass fragments exploded like a galaxy, pouring down, carrying all the false sweet memories with them. Glittering, sharp shards flew everywhere, landing in my hair, on my face, my arms, on the floor, like a cruel, spectacular, funereal rain. The light shattered instantly, the room plunged into gloom, lit only by the gray, dismal daylight filtering through the window, illuminating the devastation. I stood on the table, gasping for breath, still holding the ridiculous cleaver, my whole body shaking violently, like a leaf about to shatter in a storm. Luca stood amidst the wreckage. He didn't try to approach again, just watched me from a distance. His face showed no anger, no fear, not even a hint of guilt. Only a complete, suffocating coldness, and a kind of cruel calm, as if finally relieved of a burden. In the dead silence of the ruin, filled with glass dust, he spoke. His voice was calm, clear, like a dagger dipped in ice, precisely, slowly thrust into the last of my crumbling resolve, shattering it completely. Nicole, he said, each word like an icicle hitting the ground. I never loved you. Are you satisfied now? The world, at that moment, completely lost its sound and color. I looked at him, at this man I had loved for 3 years, seen as my entire world, been willing to change myself for. His eyes were like Siberian permafrost, barren, frozen, showing no signs of life. Without another word, I climbed down from the table like a puppet whose strings had been cut, mechanically stepped around the fragments on the floor, didn't even glance at him, and walked straight to the door. I needed air. I needed to get out of this place where every breath felt like inhaling glass shards. I pulled the door open, staggered into the hallway. The cold air hit my face. I leaned against the wall, slowly slid down to the floor, and buried my face in my knees. No tears. Just boundless numbness and emptiness, a cold that seeped from the marrow of my bones. The neighbor across the hall, Mrs. Hoffman, disturbed by the enormous noise, opened her door and peered out. She saw me sitting on the floor, glimpsed the disaster scene through my open door, her face a mask of shock and pity. She said something rapidly in German, probably questions and comfort. After a moment, she came over with a glass of water, handed it to me, then pointed towards my balcony inside the apartment and said another long sentence. My brain felt leaden, the German words rolled over me like indistinct noise, impossible to grasp. I only caught a few scattered words, geranium, always. Luca, cared for. I looked in the direction she pointed, blankly. On the balcony, the red geranium I had poured so much heart into, symbolizing my yearning for a new life, stood there, blooming as vibrantly, as glaringly as ever in the gloomy light. Mrs. Hoffman, seeing I was completely out of it, slowed her pace, used extremely simple German vocabulary, accompanied by gestures, and painstakingly explained to me. This time, I understood. She said, "Nicole, your geranium, so beautiful. That it grows so well, always. Luca took care of it. At first you always forgot to water, or too much water. Later, Luca came to ask me how to care for it. He every day would water on time, careful with fertilizer. You see it now, so good." Whatever she said after that, I couldn't hear any more. So that was it. So, even this one thing I felt was completely my own, this proof that I wasn't entirely worthless, this geranium, wasn't something I had kept alive on my own. The reason it could bloom with such desperate, ironic redness was because of Luca. Because he, using the German I couldn't understand and never mastered, asked my neighbor for advice, and then, behind my back, like completing a chore, silently, charitably, tended to it. He took care of this plant just like he initially took care of me. Out of a sense of condescending responsibility, or merely to maintain the facade of a passably presentable home. These 3 years, not only was my feeling built on the quicksand of lies, but the one living proof of vitality I relied on for breath in this apartment was nourishment he secretly doled out. This final blow was more cruel, more heart-piercing, than "I never loved you." It utterly annihilated my reason for being. I was a complete and utter fool, living in a carefully woven, or casually constructed, cage of his lies, a self-deluding clown. When the Berlin Wall fell, people cheered and celebrated the end of division, the arrival of freedom. And my wall, at this moment, in the most thorough and humiliating way, rose again within my heart. Beneath the ruins lay buried a woman named Nicole, all her love, trust, dignity, and every fantasy of home and self. I staggered to my feet, didn't look at Mrs. Hoffman again, didn't look at the apartment again. I walked down the stairs, out the main door, merged into the stream of strangers on Berlin's streets. Rain had begun to fall at some point, icily striking my face, my already numb skin. In a daze, I walked to the familiar tram stop. A night tram was roaring into the station, its headlights like two huge, indifferent eyes. The rain blurred my vision, despair like a black tide submerged my last shred of reason. That, "I never loved you," the exposed truth about the geranium, felt like two invisible hands giving me a fierce shove from behind. The screech of brakes, sharp enough to tear the soul. Then the agony of my body being violently struck, and the rapidly engulfing, eternal darkness. I didn't die immediately. In brief moments of lucidity during my final hours in the hospital, my consciousness flickered like a candle in the wind. I heard the hurried footsteps of medical staff, the monotonous beep of machines. Then, I heard a familiar, frantic voice. It was Luca. He sounded like he'd burst straight out of hell, his voice hoarse, incoherent. "Nicole. Nicole, where are you? Wake her up. Please, wake her up. I was wrong. I know I was wrong." He seemed to be struggling with the doctors, his voice full of desperate sobs. "She won't die. She's just angry. She's punishing me. Save her. Whatever it takes. I'll pay any amount." He rushed to my bedside. I could feel him gripping my cold hand tightly, scalding tears falling in large drops onto the back of my hand. In a voice I had never heard before, filled with terror, remorse, and brokenness, he repeated over and over in my ear. "I'm sorry. Nicole. I'm sorry. I'm a bastard. I'm the stupidest bastard in the world. I love you, I really love you. I loved you from the first moment I saw you. I lied. Those were all damned lies. Please don't leave me, Nicole. I'll never treat you like that again. I regret it. I regret it so much. Look at me, please, just look at me once more, my Nicole. His confession felt like a belated redemption, yet also the cruelest punishment. When I had poured everything into loving, into yearning, he had been stingy with even a fraction of sincerity. Now, as my life was rapidly draining away, these words came flooding in, but they could no longer warm my cold body, they could only intensify his own agony. Too late, Luca. Everything is far too late. My consciousness finally sank into the boundless darkness, carrying a strange sense of peace. Finally, it was over. All of it, the lies and the pain. Yet, I seemed to hear the sound of his heart shattering into dust, synchronously with my death. My passing did not bring peace. It dragged Luca into a hell worse than death. He didn't attend my funeral. He locked himself inside that apartment filled with memories and glass shards, the place where he had verbally denied our love. The neighbors, unable to bear the disturbance, called the police, reporting that they could always hear him ranting to himself in 2 languages at night. Sometimes it was a gentle, unnerving whisper, mimicking my accent and tone, "It's okay, Luca, I forgive you." Other times it was a fierce self-interrogation and argument, faithfully recreating the dialogue from our final disaster. "I never loved you." He would repeat it in his own originally cold, cruel tone. Then immediately switch to a heart-wrenching sob, "No. That's not true. It was a lie. I did love you. Nicole, do you hear me? I loved you to the point of madness. Come back. Come back." He lived in an eternal purgatory constructed from lies, guilt, and completely collapsed reason. He obsessively gathered every trace I had left behind, my notes filled with grammatical errors, my lipstick worn down to the tube, a few long strands of my hair left on the pillow. He would hold the sweater I often wore, curl up in a corner all night, and like an addict, deeply inhale whatever faint scent might remain, or perhaps only existed in his hallucinations. He tended to the geranium with even greater obsession, treating it as the sole relic connecting him to me, a symbol of atonement. He would talk incessantly to that plant, which bloomed an increasingly vivid, almost vampirically gorgeous red, as if fed by pain. He used my never fluent, halting German to repeat those care details he had once scorned. "Look, Nicole, our flower. I'm caring for it the way you wanted. Do you see? Without you, it's nothing. And so am I. I'm just an empty shell." Finally, on a morning thick with fog and biting cold, the landlord arrived with the police and forced the door open. The apartment was unnaturally tidy, as if all chaos had been violently suppressed by a willful mind. Only the geranium remained, placed in the center of the living room in a single shaft of gray-white light, red enough to be startling, like a heart still weeping blood in the silence. Luca was gone. He was last seen near that famous, fragmented stretch of the Berlin Wall, the place where our fates had first intertwined. He wore the same worn leather jacket from our first meeting, his hair streaked with gray and disheveled, his eyes hollow as if his soul had been scooped out. His trembling fingers repeatedly traced a patch of faded, peeling graffiti where a human silhouette was still faintly discernible, as if touching a fragile mirage. He spoke to that mottled, silent wall, in a voice so gentle it was eerie, as if afraid to wake a sleeping spirit, repeating, hopelessly, his confession and plea. "You were like the last graffiti of East Berlin, stubborn and beautiful. I loved you. I loved you from the first moment I saw you. Come back. Nicole. I regret it. I really regret it so much." The bitter wind, cutting through the cracks of history, whipped past his hunched, withered frame, bringing no answer. That wall which had once fallen now stood again, towering and firmly re-established, between him and the whole living world, between his endless remorseful present and his forever irrecoverable past. It was more icy and hopeless than any concrete and steel. And he was forever imprisoned in the wall's shadow, locked in an eternal cage built from his own lies, his belated love, and the ghost of the woman he had personally pushed into the abyss of destruction. The rest of his life would be an endless, looping, solitary reenactment of that rainy night's final rupture. The red geranium became the eternal flame before our shared grave, a testament to how love and hate can burn a person to ashes.